Okay. I'll ask you to stop this, what I think, and I hope it's a rather pleasant activity. I got to preach in First Presbyterian Church this morning. Anybody there from there? Okay, one of you. You get your money back. But I told them that I once lost control of a church when I asked them to do this. And you get enough people together and you start remembering the Sabbath. That's what the commandment says, remember the Sabbath. And what happens is people start getting happy. You all got a smile on your face when you're talking. How many of you remember going to church on that day? Okay. How many of you remember being with family, meals, naps, funny papers? The commandments are ordered on purpose. The first three are about God. How do we've got one God. We're not supposed to have idols. We're not to take that in vain. And so that's what the first three of the Ten Commandments do. Commandments 5 through 10 are about how we're supposed to get along with each other. Honor your parents, don't lie, cheat, steal, run around, go with girls and do. No. Don't put anything on your credit card trying to keep up with your neighbors. I'm kidding about that. It says thou shalt not put anything on your credit card. So, really about how we order society. And it's how it's been done for thousands of years. And this fourth commandment, which I have up here, is the longest of all the Ten Commandments. It's longer than all the ones that come behind it. And what does it do? It's really a bridge between God and humanity. And because God keeps this commandment himself, we learned in the beginning of Genesis, God walks out on this bridge. And when we keep the Sabbath, I think we walk out and meet him halfway. And theologians would maybe be able to argue that this is really a sacrament. I love the definition of a sacrament is that when we get a hold of something and God's got a hold of the other side of it. And that's what I like to think of Sabbath as. If we've got any theologians in the room, please don't argue with me after. You're right, I'm wrong, please forgive me. And so this commandment is given, and it's given a number of times in the Bible. I read to you out of Exodus 20. It's in Deuteronomy, and it's got another explanation there of why you should do it. One of my favorite times it's in the Bible is in Exodus 31. And God has been with Moses on the top of Mount Sinai. Can you wrap your head around this? I think, when I read by this the first few times, I really couldn't. It's just intellectual. But when I wrapped my head and my heart about it, what was that like? And Moses is getting ready to leave, and he's got the Ten Commandments in his backpack, and he's getting ready to rappel over the north face of Mount Sinai or whatever. And I've never been there, so don't hold me, literally accountable for that. And just as he gets ready to go, God says, remember the Sabbath. And he repeats the entire fourth commandment. The last parting words. Why? It's the same as when we sent our child off to college to begin with, or my kids are going for a trip. He's saying, I love you with this. And this is the piece of information you need to go out there in the world. The point of not having this in our lives now is huge. And very few of you keep the Sabbath, but you grew up in generations that did and knew that. And if you keep a Sabbath every day for a year, you spent 52 days with the Lord. If you keep a Sabbath for a decade, you can do the numbers. If you keep the Sabbath for an average life now, you'll spend over a decade with the Lord. and in rest, and with family. Remember, this helps you do both sides of the commandments there. Take that away from a person, you will profoundly change the character. Your character is changed if you don't take advantage of this, if you don't open the gift of it. Think about it this way. If I were to take 10 years of education away from most people in this room, you'd still be human. You could still get a job. You could still function, drive a car, all those things. But I really would have changed your character. And this is a giant chunk with the Lord. And so I think we profoundly change our character. We go and we go. And what happens when we do that, amongst other things, is life, I believe, begins to not make as much sense as it should. If we have musicians here, the saying comes from musicians that if you have all notes and no pauses in between, you don't have music. It's the pauses that make the music. The same is true in writing. My wife and I are writers, and my wife's been an English professor and teacher in high school and that sort of thing. When she was a college English teacher, she gave a diagnostic essay at the beginning of the semester, to find out whether you should even be in the class, I suppose. And she had this one student, I can never get this right. Is it Carlton or Clinton? That's his real name, and I'm not supposed to say. And he turned in this diagnostic essay, and it was 3 pages long. Not one indentation, not one comma, semicolon, one period, nothing. A 3-page run-on sentence. I am convinced that one of the reasons that God gave us the Sabbath is so that our life wasn't like Clinton's paper, just a run-on sentence. I have just a little illustration of how, how this works in, consider this sentence with the pause in it where it's supposed to be. Let's eat. Just think about the implications. You take out one of those. Well, I can't do all of this, about keeping the Sabbath. All I can do is invite you to get one of the books and just take one. If you forgot your wallet or you don't have the money or whatever, I don't care. Just take it. It is so important to me that people have this peace that I've been able to experience. We've been keeping the Sabbath for a decade. One of the downsides, I think some people think, of Sabbath keeping is that there can be legalism around it. What is rest? What is work? Well, the definitions have changed. Slaves' work was manual labor. Now, work is pushing a key through an eighth of an inch while you sit in the air conditioner, sipping Starbucks. But that's our work. And play might be going for a run and getting sweaty or working in the garden. And so the definition of work has changed. And what some people remember is legalism surrounding this. Does anybody know somebody that was legalistic about this when they were a kid? Yeah, a couple of real strong, yeah. So you don't want to become legalistic. All you got to do is remember to pray and play on these days. You go to your church, you pray or whatever, but the play part is really important too, and the naps, that sort of thing. And I have a story to illustrate legalism, and it comes from this little girl. She's 2, and she's 23 now, but that's my daughter when she was 2. And her older brother used to push her buttons. He knew where every one of them was. He personally installed them for the first couple of years of her life, right? And one day, my son comes running across the kitchen floor and, bangs out the screen door, and he's screaming the whole way, Dad, Emma's trying to bite and hit me. And he's terror kind of in his eyes. And he runs out, and it's like screaming this as he goes out the yard. It's like a little Doppler fade, and he's going so fast. Well, along comes my daughter, running on her little 2-year-old legs. Her teeth are bared, and her fists are clenched and everything. And she's running across the floor, and I'm like, Emma, stop. And she's just not stopping. And I scoop her up like this, and she's still running in my arms like a little cartoon character. You know, and I'm like, Emma, what are you doing? Trying to bite and hit your brother. And she just like an electric bolt hit her. And she turned and she stared me in the eyes, the look of the unjustly accused. And she said, I am not trying to bite and hit him. I am just trying to bite him. And that's legalism. And human beings have this tendency towards legalism. And Christ comes along, and man, oh man, does he have to deal with this. I mean, there is a sect of Judaism at the time Christ comes along, which maintains, and it's not a small sect either, that you can't have a bowel movement on the Sabbath because that's work. Yeah, I'm sorry. How do you think it got the name restroom? Okay, so Christ comes into this and he's got all these legalistic little kids that kind of bozos around him saying, you know, oh, you're gonna go to heaven and sit, you know, on God's side. Can I ride in the front of the school bus with you? I mean, that's their next question. And Christ is always trying to get people to the intent of these commandments. Why are they there? So if the commandment says to not kill, then Christ says the intent is not even to walk around angry. Don't even be angry at somebody. If the commandment says don't commit adultery, Christ says don't even surf the internet looking for something you shouldn't find. If the commandment says don't envy, Christ tells the young man, give everything you have away and follow me. And so, what is the intent of the longest of the Ten Commandments, the commandment that Christ kept all of his life? I think that we learn this in Luke when Jesus goes back to his hometown synagogue. It's clear he hasn't been there for a long, long time. They're waiting to see, what did this whiz kid, who the Bible mentions when he's 12, who didn't just know his Hebrew, he could go toe-to-toe with the rabbis there at the big place in Jerusalem. What is he going to have to say? And Christ gets up and he reads from the book of Isaiah. And he reads that he's there to set the captives free, that the blind are going to see again, the lame will walk. At the end he says, I'm here to declare the acceptable year of the Lord. The acceptable year of the Lord is the Jubilee year. It's the mother of all Sabbaths. Every 7 days, 1 day of rest. Every 7 years, 1 year of rest. Every 7 cycles of that. Did I get that one? You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, the Jubilee year is a whole year where if you lost the farm, you get it back. Student debts wiped out. Everything. And Christ sits down and they wait to see what he's going to say. And what he says is, today you've seen it. He's saying, I am the Jubilee year. I am the Sabbath. This is the peace that you've been looking for. He goes on another time to say, you're not meant to save the Sabbath. It, me, was sent here to save you. He says he's Lord over the Sabbath day. I'll leave you, I hope we have the slide here, with a thought from, and why not? This, I forgot about. This is called a syllogism, or a transitive property for you mathematicians. It says, so this is why do we stop and rest? If A equals B, then B equals C, then C equals A. Will you give me that? I'm in a Baptist church. Name in, please. Amen. All right. God is holy, God rests, and therefore rest is holy. In our society, work is holy. But in God's society, rest is holy. I'll leave you with this quote. Lincoln was a strict keeper of the Ten Commandments. He didn't, quote, give his heart to Jesus until he went to Gettysburg. And then he said that he did, and right after that, he put "In God We Trust" on the money. But he always kept the Ten Commandments. And this is, as we keep or break the Sabbath day, we nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope by which man rises. This, I believe, is the part of what do we do about a world that's dying. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Hannah Jane is going to come and make a few comments, and then I will, and then the three of us will be part of a panel. There are little response cards on your table. If you want to jot down a question or two now, or while Hannah Jane and I are talking, we'll collect those and use that as part of the way we get the panel conversation going.